Have you ever wondered about combining a career in military service along with a career in federal civilian employment? Well, if you have, today's FERS Federal Fact Check is for you. Today's question comes from Jeff. He says, "Greetings, I'm retired from the Army after 20 years as a staff sergeant. I'm currently a GS-14 with 11 years under FERS. When I retire, do I keep my military retirement monthly check and a federal GS retirement separate from the military time? Or should I buy back my military time and then retire with 40 plus years of service?" Sorry, I'm confused. Well, Jeff, I don't blame you for being confused. This is a really big decision since you served those 20 years in military service and are already receiving the retired pay that you earn from that career. But you may have an opportunity under FERS and you won't know until you do a little bit of number crunching, which we're going to talk about today to help you decide. So first of all, just to let everyone know, military service in the Armed Forces of the United States is creditable for retirement purpose if it was active service terminated under honorable conditions and performed prior to your separation from civilian service for retirement. So that's the standard definition of creditable military service according to the Office of Personnel Management and the law that provides that credit. So in order to count military service towards your retirement, whether it's under CSRS or whether it's under FERS, you're going to need to buy back or pay a military service credit deposit. And for FERS employees, that deposit is equal to 3% of your military base pay that you earn during the period of military service that you're buying back. In addition to that basic deposit, you might also owe interest. The only way you can avoid interest is if you pay that deposit back before your third anniversary of federal service. Interest starts accruing on your second anniversary, but it's not added to the amount you owe until that third anniversary date. Also, if you've had interrupted service where you were called up to active duty during your federal career, when you come back and are discharged from active service, you'll still have that same 3-year grace period to pay back the military service deposit before you start to accrue interest. This is what the interest rates look like over the years. So you can see on this chart that in recent years, last year and this year, the interest rate on these deposits has only been 1.375%. But in prior years, if we're going back to the early 2000s or late 1990s, you can see that interest rate was pretty high. So that's when the banks were earning a decent rate of interest as well. And it's nice when you're earning interest at those rates, but nobody wants to pay back interest at those higher rates. If you're wondering, how do I go about buying it back? What do I need to do? What forms do I need to fill out? Well, the start of that whole process is to get a copy of your DD-214 or discharge certificate, and also get copies of any military records you have. For instance, if you served in the reserves and you had summer camps, you would need to document the date you entered active duty and the date you were discharged. Sometimes that can be found on your orders if they were stamped showing the date that you were released from active duty. If you need copies of your military records, you can write to the Military Personnel Records Center in St. Louis, Missouri to get copies of your records. Now, keep in mind, throughout the pandemic, they were not coming into the building to work, so those requests could be somewhat delayed even at this point. Now, to continue on paying that military service deposit, I would highly recommend that you follow the step-by-step instructions at the Defense Finance and Accounting Service, as I've through the years found that they have the best instructions for paying back the military deposit. There's a link on this form, and we'll put a link on the website to take you right to that section to help you follow those steps to get that deposit paid back if that's what you decide to do. Now, military retirees like Jeff, they can't apply their years of military service towards their civilian retirement if they're continuing to receive retired pay from the military. So Jeff must waive or give up his military retired pay in order to use those 20 years under FERS. That's a big decision. So in addition to paying back the service with this 3% deposit, he also will have to waive or give up his retired pay when he retires under FERS. So how do you decide? So on the left side of this slide, you can see that combining his service, that 20 years of military service plus 11 years under FERS, would give him a total career of 41 years of service. Now under FERS, the calculation is those years of service times 1% or 1.1% if he's 62 or older, and he has, of course, in this case, more than 20 years of service. Now, in his case, he said he's a GS 14. So let's say his salary or his high 3 average salary is at 140,000. So combining those two careers together would give him approximately 41% of 140,000 or 57,400 a year. And even more if he was 62 or older, that same benefit would be worth 63,140 a year. So a very significant FERS basic benefit, considering it would be based now on 41 years of total service. So to figure out if this is worth it to do, Jeff is also going to have to look at what happens if he doesn't combine. That's what you see on the right side. So Jeff says his military retired pay is coming in at about $30,000 a year. His FERS retirement, only based on his civilian service, would be only 11% of his high 3 average salary, or in this case, $4,400 a year. So if you add those two together, he's only going to get $34,400 as opposed to combining it together where his total compensation would be $57,400. So a significantly higher benefit in this case for combining. And by the way, that's not always the case. So you have to run these numbers for yourself before you find out if it's going to make sense for you to even consider buying back that career of military service so that you can combine this together. So you'll need 2 retirement estimates, one with your military service included with your FERS time, and the second one just based on your civilian federal service under FERS. So his combined benefit, like we said before, is significantly higher than the one kept separate. So how much does he have to pay for that military deposit? That's what he needs to find out sooner than later. He could potentially owe tens of thousands of dollars for a 20-year career in military service. So that's going to be an important factor. For instance, if he owes $30,000 in a military deposit, and the difference in his retirement is about $20,000, then within a year and a half, he'll get back as much combined benefit as what he owed. And for the rest of his life, he'll continue collecting that larger benefit. In that situation, it would be worthwhile to consider it. Remember that once he combines this together under FERS retirement benefits get a diet COLA, meaning that sometimes it's 1% less than what he would have received on his military retirement. So he has to consider that over time, the difference between the combined benefit and if he had kept them separate is going to be smaller and smaller, although it still might be significant enough, such as in this case, that it's still worth considering. The other caution flag would be, what if something changes under FERS and now he's given up that military retired pay that possibly didn't undergo a change? For instance, there was a time that Congress proposed no more COLAs for FERS retirees. I don't think that will happen, but if it did, he would be kicking himself if he had waived his retired pay and put all of that service under FERS. So that is a risk, not necessarily a major risk, but something to keep in mind. And also, if he's married and he's considering survivor benefits for his spouse, compare the difference in what that benefit would look like under FERS versus military service, and also the cost of that benefit under both systems could be different. Now, in order to waive his retired pay, he needs to send a letter before he retires under FERS to DFAS, to the Defense Finance and Accounting Service, letting them know that as of the date of his FERS retirement, he no longer wants to receive his retired pay in order to credit that service under FERS. And it's very important that he tells DFAS why he's waiving the retired pay. It's to get credit under FERS. That's the important part. So he'll either take that and mail it to the DFAS office, or he can fax it to them at the number you see on the screen. Now, if a retirement under the military has been awarded on account of a service-connected disability or under a reserve retirement, those two situations, the retired pay would not have to be waived in order to receive credit for the active duty under FERS. So that's where you can kind of have your cake and eat it too. Continue the retired pay from the military, but then count that active service by paying the deposit under FERS. So a lot of reservists in particular will pay for their active duty because it doesn't mean they have to give anything up other than the amount of money it takes to buy it back. Now also keep in mind that those people who have their retirement based on VA benefits from the military, maybe their retired pay has already been offset to provide them benefits from the VA. Those benefits coming from the Veterans Administration are not retired pay and therefore don't have to be waived in order to credit that time under FERS or CSRS for that matter. And finally, one little mention about National Guard service, because typically National Guard service is not creditable as federal service under FERS or CSRS. However, if you were called to active service by the Secretary of Defense or the President, then that then becomes federalized service and can be counted. In addition, under the rules under USERRA, after August of 1990, if you were interrupted in your civilian career to serve in the Guard, and you come back to that civilian career, then that time in the National Guard can be counted as military service, and you would want to look into paying that deposit for that time. So hopefully this helps you to understand a little bit more about military retirement and combining that military retirement under the civilian federal retirement system we call FERS. Until next time, this is Tammy Flanagan with your FERS Federal Fact Check. Thank you.